Hi traders, in this video we're going to talk about the latest variant of coronavirus, which is known as Omicron. I thought it's a good idea to make a separate video and discuss market implications, specifically for the Forex market. We saw that markets crashed last Friday, S&P index fell more than 2.5%, and we also had a very strong reaction in the foreign exchange market. FX market is very sensitive to risk aversion. I think it accounts for about 30-40% of all price actions in the Forex. In case if the risk aversion is very strong, it can substantially affect the currency rates. It can actually move and crash substantial and important support technical levels. So all tendencies change and risk aversion becomes in the focus of the markets. So usually there's a strong correlation in the Forex market, especially on cyclical currency rates. So here I have a very interesting chart which shows you betas on different currencies. You can see that some currencies like Australian dollar and New Zealand dollar, they're much more sensitive. And safe haven currencies such as Japanese yen and the Swiss franc, they're less sensitive. So they appreciate in the cases when S&P index crashes. And we can also see that according to this research, the risk aversion became much stronger after the last financial crisis. And some currencies are specifically very, very much sensitive to what is happening on the stock market and generally in the financial markets. So that's why risk aversion is very important. And if you're trading FX, and also if you're trading crypto markets, you can see that these markets react. Crypto markets are becoming also very sensitive. They are risky assets, so that's why we saw that many cryptos fell by 7-8% last Friday. So that's why I thought it's a good idea to make a separate video and discuss once again what are the market implications, what can actually happen in the future. So first of all, just to mention once again, this video is brought to you by Finteria Markets. Please visit our website for more information about our company. You will find many interesting tools and services on the website, including many tools like FX risk aversion. This tool helps you to see if the risk aversion is very strong in the Forex market. It is actually based on the correlation between two groups of currencies. So safe haven currencies, the US dollar, Japanese yen, and the Swiss franc, and risky currencies such as Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar, and Canadian dollar. So right now you can see that the risk aversion is quite neutral, but last Friday we had values which were above 90%, and it actually meant that the risk aversion was very strong last Friday. So let's discuss the current situation and market implications related to Omicron. I think there are generally three potential scenarios how things can evolve. Well, first of all, we should say that the markets calmed down right now. We can see that the S&P index, the CFD is slightly higher, approximately 1%. Most of the currencies and also commodity markets are up. Oil is up 5%. We can see that also here I have the yields on the 10-year government bonds. We can see that they are up 3%. So it seems that the market found some equilibrium and it's relatively calm in the current environment. Anyway, I think it's very important to discuss what are the potential scenarios. So in my opinion, there are three scenarios. The first scenario is that it's a false alarm and it's fear-driven. So I estimate that it's a potentially likelihood of 45%. So the reason behind this scenario is that the market sometimes becomes very sensitive to headlines, and it can really become fear-driven. We saw a lot of very, let's say, sensitive headlines in the media, and the market started to react heavily. So in my opinion, this can potentially be a false alarm. And, of course, there are some new variants. All viruses actually mutate, And I think that we probably have multiple versions of coronavirus existing right now in different parts of the world. And probably Omicron is not the last one, and probably there are still many new variants. So in my opinion, this can be just overreaction, that, just a simple fact that there is a new variant of coronavirus, and the market is so much focused on particularly this disease and this variant, and everyone starts talking about the number of cases. This is definitely overreaction of the market, because there are lots of diseases in the world. All the viruses mutate all the time. And it doesn't mean that a new variant represents a danger for the world economy. The human body, the human immune system is generally very strong. Otherwise, we wouldn't survive till today. So that's why I think in general there was a really strong overreaction to the news. So that's why I think that, according also to what we see right now, and I think in the coming 3-4 days, we can actually make a more significant conclusion if this was a false alarm, if it was really and purely fear driven. But so far, I estimate that it's very likely that this is a false alarm. The second scenario is that this variant is very similar to Delta. It will cause a slowdown in the economic recovery. So the main threat of Delta was that it actually caused, and it's still causing, a substantial slowdown. We see that cases are rising right now in Europe and also in some other parts of the world, and this is mainly happening due to Delta. So I estimate probability about 35%. Probably it's even lower, so it's hard to say. We need some more time. And the third scenario, which is less likely, but it's more serious than Delta, it will result in new lockdowns and substantial economic slowdown. And this scenario is actually more dangerous. It can result in the economic recession. So it's still very early, and I think it might take weeks and probably months to confirm this scenario. So far, to understand if we're between the first and the second one, we can make this conclusion probably within a week. Then we will mainly have two scenarios. It's either the scenario of the second scenario, which is very similar to the Delta variant, or it's a more dangerous scenario. So I think time is very important, because we will have much more information. And in the current environment, I think it's really important to focus on what's really important. First of all, we see a lot of headlines and scary titles in the media, and this is attracting a lot of attention. So the information is reposted in the social media. The information is everywhere on the TV, radio, and the market starts to be very sensitive, and we see a lot of overreaction. And I think it's very important to ignore the headlines. You basically need to look at the stats, at the numbers, what is actually happening in the world, what's the number of cases, what's the number of hospitalizations. It's very important to ignore opinions, even if these opinions belong to doctors. The famous quote of Warren Buffett, "Don't ask the barber whether you need a haircut, because he will definitely say that, yes, you need a new haircut." So in case if we get opinion from even from doctors, their opinion can be very biased, and sometimes we can have very substantial and sometimes contradictory opinions on Omicron variant. So I think it's very important to pay attention and to focus more on the number of cases, and especially on the number of shares in the overall cases. So right now, for example, in South Africa, Omicron takes about 75% of all coronavirus cases. This is a kind of warning, alarming sign, but it still can change, and we do not know actually what's going to be the future situation with the cases. I think this is something that we need to monitor. I think what's really important, and this is actually more important than the number of cases and the number of the sheer number of Omicron, it's actually the exact measures and restrictions that will be taken by governments. So in case if we will see, for example, new travel restrictions or new social distancing measures or new lockdowns. So depending on the measures that will be taken by governments and which governments exactly will take those measures, we will have very different situation and very different implications. But this is what is going to be the most critical, because the number of cases are not that important as the measures taken by the governments. This is exactly what can drive the market sentiment and will actually slow down the economic recovery. If the governments are taking substantial measures to restrict the movements and the consumer spending, this will actually hit the markets, and the markets will respond very strongly and substantially to those measures. So I think this is one of the aspects that needs to be in the focus. Also today, like, we will have many announcements related to Omicron. For example, there's going to be a statement from the White House released early during the US session. And I think this statement is going to be very important, what they will say, and will they decide to implement any restrictions. Also, one important thing is that many countries probably will fear to announce new variants. Like, we can see that all the rest of the world is just banning South Africa right now. Is basically everybody's punishing South Africa just because they announced and they told the world that, okay, we have a new variant. I think that probably the next countries will decide, in case if they discover a new variant, they will not publicly disclose this information. They will prefer to hide this information because they will be afraid of economic measures against this country. So this can potentially have a very negative influence on the spread of the virus. And then another question that still remains open is how dangerous is Omicron? How quickly will it spread? If it results in increased number of hospitalizations. There are also some opinions that Omicron is actually very mild. For example, there's information that it doesn't cause any breathing problems, that people actually will not die a lot from this variant, that for example, implications are very mild, that people who suffer, who get Omicron variant, they only have some headaches, they feel like extremely tired, but there are no very serious implications for the health. So I think it's still very early to say. Even the numbers that we get from South Africa, those numbers are like not really high. It's just the beginning of a new wave. And it's still hard to say if we will see that these cases are growing. Probably it will slow down. And also we need to understand if there's a substantial increase in the speed of the progression. So if the cases are actually exploding, and what is the reproduction scale, what's the reproduction speed. For example, if we look at the cases, well, at the pure stats, which are published by, for example, the Health Laboratory of South Africa, we can see that, for example, the number of cases today is around 3,000, but if you compare it with the previous day, the previous day we had 3,200. So the number of cases is actually already slowing down. It's not really as high as it was before. So that's why it's very important to pay attention to the actual number of cases and to the speed, to the progression rate. Another question that is going to be very important is, will vaccines actually work? And one of the concerns that we have in the markets is that the new variant has lots of mutations. So I found a very interesting chart which actually shows you that well, viruses mutate, and here, for example, we have this is called a mutation tree. And here we see that most of the previous mutations were very similar and close to each other. However, Omicron is very much different. It has more mutations than the previous versions. And probably the existing vaccines are not as efficient, and they do not target and do not protect your immune system from the new variant. And then another question, how much time will actually be needed to roll out a new booster, a new version that actually is efficient against the new variant? So according to the preliminary information from Pfizer and from producers of Pfizer and Moderna, we have information that it can take up to 100 days to roll out new boosters. So there's already significant experience that exists in the world. So in creation of this type of vaccines, and of course, it will not take 1 year to produce and roll out a new vaccine. It will take considerably less time. So that's why this is in general a positive news. And even in case if we have this third scenario, the worst case scenario, when this variant is more dangerous than Delta, anyway, this scenario is not going to be similar to what we saw before in the beginning of the coronavirus recession. So because we were in the beginning, there were a lot of unknowns, and economic slowdown was very substantial. And here, even if we move in the worst case scenario, I think the implications still will be not as dangerous, not as horrible. The new vaccine can be rolled out much faster. The economic implications will be still not as serious. So in all cases, I think that it's important to look at the facts, look at what can actually happen in the markets. It's still early to say what is going to happen. So that's why I will just make some conclusions. So what is actually indeed very important for the market. So once again, it's important to look at the pure facts, number of cases, and how actually Omicron spreads out around the world if we have more Omicron cases in the rest of the world, and what's the progression and the speed of this virus. And another important factor is to pay attention to the measures and restrictions taken by government. So we have a lot of unknown facts, unknown information, still very early to say how Omicron will actually evolve. But what's actually real and what is known is the actual measures taken by the government. So this is something that can actually drive the markets. And in case if the governments will start implementing new lockdowns, new restrictions, we can see more fears in the market. So in my opinion, there's still some likelihood that potentially the markets will respond in case if we see increasing cases and new measures introduced by governments. Probably there's going to be another wave of fear and another potential crash in the markets. So far, we're not seeing this happening, but these things can actually change. So that's why it's important to pay attention to government, what the government is announcing, what the official members are saying, and what's going to be the real restrictions and real measures taken by the government. So I will keep also an eye on this new variant. So I'll provide some updates related to Omicron. And also, like in my research, in my analysis, I will focus a lot on how Omicron is driving the markets. So right now, I think the market's focus is very much on the new variant, and it's driving the currency rate. So initially, we saw a lot of fear in the markets, and right now it's kind of we're playing back, so rolling back all the movements that we saw before. So for example, today we can see a substantial appreciation of, for example, we can see that there's a significant recovery in some risky currencies such as the Australian dollar, Japanese yen. So you can use our website and use the service which is called Currency Strength. And if we will look at the last, let's pick up 8 hours. So here you will actually see that some currencies are recovering gradually. So for example, we can see here Australian dollar. Well, actually, still you can see that there's still some risk aversion happening. So let me just select different time frames. Probably 4-hour would be the best. So you can actually see that Japanese yen is still very much sensitive. So it actually grew, especially in the beginning. I'm going to basically pick up this week. So like this. This one is actually the most correct one. So yeah, just pay attention that some risky assets, Australian dollar gained 0.4%, New Zealand dollar gained 0.19, Canadian dollar gained 0.2%. So you can see that risk aversion is rolled back. At the same time, some risky assets suffered quite a lot. Swiss franc lost 0.4%. Euro actually benefited from the situation, and now you can see that it's suffering. It lost 0.33%. And also we saw a lot of volatility on the Japanese yen. First, it fell by 0.2%, but then it's recovered. It's actually the most sensitive currency, so that's why we see a pretty strong reaction. So yeah, once again, I think I really recommend you to check our website and use the tools which are called FX Risk Aversion. So this tool will help you understand what is happening in the market if there is strong risk aversion, and you can also use currency strength, and you can switch to this week. This is the best time frame, and it will show you what are the current tendencies and movements between the currencies, and pay attention to risky currencies, so cyclical currencies versus safe haven currencies. So that's it for this video. I hope this video was very useful. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below this video. And also give us your thumb ups and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for watching, and I wish you a nice day.